What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Monday morning edition of Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Bet365. If you're going to place a bet on 365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. So use our code NATION, NATION. We got a lot of hockey to talk about, but before we do any of that, we got to show some love to all the vets and the people that have served this incredible country. I know we have a lot of you in our chat, and Colby and I, we try to talk about it as much as we can, but today is a day, obviously, where there's a lot of focus on it, and we couldn't be more thankful for, all the people that support us, all the people that have fought for this country, and you guys seriously allow us to do this every single day, and it's a dream come true to have this job and to talk about hockey every day, and it's really because of you guys, and before I say anything more, I want to send it over to Colby so he can say a few words as well.
Well, it's also Remembrance Day in Canada, and I know we have a lot of Canadian listeners and viewers and whatnot, so it's an important day. It really is, and, something that I was always near and dear to my heart because of my grandfather. He was a veteran. He was an Air Force guy, and I have all these great pictures of him in his uniforms and all this stuff back in the day. And then I work with the Flyers Warriors hockey program. I did a lot of work with the Chicago Blackhawk Warriors when I was in Chicago. The Philly guys have really become my friends. They actually have their gala on Friday night here in Philadelphia, and I'll give the Flyers actually a lot of credit. They do a lot of work with the Flyers Warriors, and the team supports the cause a lot. The players, though, actually voluntarily, it's not like one of those sort of mandated, hey, we're doing an event with the Flyers Warriors. Like, the Flyers players just actually like to come out and do it. But it's an important day. It's a federal holiday. I don't know if you remember learning much about Veterans Day in school growing up, Johnny. Do you remember any of that from high school or anything?
I honestly don't. No.
I was going to hit you with a little trivia question.
You can hit me with it. I'm curious.
If you remember what president was like the first president to identify this day and talk about this day. It's funny. The only reason I really remember it and I know it so well is because it was we called one of my teammates by this guy's name in hockey, but you're giving me a blank stare. So it was Woodrow Wilson. Okay. This was the last day of World War I, obviously many, many years ago. So an important day, a federal holiday in the U.S., a day that definitely should be celebrated. I don't think we do enough for the veterans, to be honest. I think there's definitely more we could do. And when you start hearing about homelessness amongst the veteran community, it's awful, honestly. It's something that should never be allowed to happen in our country. And it's a group of people that should be at the very top of the priority list for being taken care of because of what they were all willing to do and sacrifice. So I know we have some veterans. I know Singsy served. I know Jeremiah served. I'm sure there are others, New York Marine. I mean, all these guys who served and did their part. We're really appreciative of it. So, yeah.
Tony B saying that you just looked that up yesterday. You don't remember that from school.
Well, I was a history major in college, so
were you actually?
Tony B, you're wrong on that one. But yeah. American history was well, I mean, obviously it's not just American history because of World War I, but yeah. American history was probably the most interesting thing I learned in college. I took as many of those classes as I could. You obviously have to take world history classes because that's how we're here, but it was way more interesting to me learning about how our country started and how our government formed, and like literally going back to the founding fathers. That stuff was always really fascinating to me. It was some of the only stuff in college that I actually paid attention to.
I will give a hockey fun fact in relation to this. Sidney Crosby is very big into history. When I spoke to him at Player Media Tour last year, we kind of talked about it. It's in like that open skate series that I do. I asked him if he can go to college and take any course. He said the course he would take was history. And then, I joked with him about the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And he actually said like one of his favorite movies is Saving Private Ryan. So if anyone doesn't know that like little fun fact about Sidney Crosby, he's a huge history guy. which is, obviously pretty cool because I feel like we don't know that much about Sid. So anytime you can kind of, give a little fun fact about him, it's cool to squeeze in there. But also, Colby, like with that comment from Tony, I just want to say one thing too. People were really rubbed the wrong way last week with our little hockey culture debate because I got so many messages about you being mean, and I know you got messages about like how you bully me, and I was like, guys, that's a healthy conversation.
What was remind me the exact
You
conversation?
tested me about like because I said Nashville needed to change their culture, and you pushed back.
Yeah. And you explained yourself.
I did, but I'm saying like people like really, I think, we got Bet365 on the screen here, so I'm not going to curse, but they think I'm a B. Like I can fight back for myself. You guys don't have to come at Colby and fight my battles for me.
I love when you fight back.
Yeah. But I got a lot of messages about it, and I know you sent me one that you got about like you being too mean to me, and I'm like, guys, like I'm okay. I didn't know if you wanted to comment about that, but
listen,
saying Colby was a meanie.
I asked you to explain yourself and to go a little bit deeper, and you did, and you gave examples and you explained yourself. I thought that was important. That's all. I wanted to know your definition of culture. I think so many people just throw culture around. I see hockey fans all the time like, oh, this team's culture sucks. And it's like, well, like, how do you know that? Like, what does culture even mean to you? Are you in the dressing room? So I just think we use that word. We use that word just so loosely. And
I agree.
I just want people to explain what they mean by it, because I do think it means something different to everybody. And so it's always good to hear what culture means to you. Like if Johnny Lazarus is building a hockey team as a general manager, what type of culture is important to him? Like what is as our friend John Goyen said, what are the ingredients to the word culture for you? So
I don't know if I could ever be a coach, man.
I don't think that was bullying.
No, not at all. I'd love to run a hockey team for a year just to see how it went. I think like a U16 team. I'd be interested in coaching.
I've been doing it for 2 years.
I know. I meant like
it's hard,
really really every day. You
hear my voice today? Do you hear my voice is struggling from this weekend's games? We had a lot. We had a lot going on this weekend. We had a couple of games. We actually made a trade this weekend. We had to part ways with a player, which is always difficult. Because we wanted to improve a different part of our hockey team. So it's hard, man. It's really hard. And the 16s and the 18s are even harder because they are young kids. The maturity level is not there. So look, it is culture is really interesting, Johnny. Now that you're bringing it up, that word has come up. We've been talking a lot about the mix of players that we have, and we having to part ways with one that's really talented, just maybe because we were looking for a different type of fit, maybe different personality. Like, they really do matter. It does. And it gives you a very different approach when you're the one having to try to form the team a little bit.
Well, honestly, we're going to talk about the Winnipeg Jets here in a second. So before we do, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps, Hockey15. And the one thing I was just going to say before we talk about Winnipeg was like, that culture word I think everyone talks about in the last couple of years, the big trade that Florida made. And that was, a culture trade, right? Like they were a good team. They had won the President's Trophy, but they decided that it just wasn't good enough. And they needed to do something about it. And, the Winnipeg Jets right now, they have had, the same team for the past couple years. They're seeing success. They haven't really seen it in the playoffs. I think the fans are happy with the team. That everyone's happy with the product that they have right now. But if things don't go well for them in the playoffs this year, like I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those trades go down. Something like that, something along those lines, right? Because when you have a team that's this competitive year after year, there's got to be something that needs to be changed. Something. And I think right now what we're kind of experiencing in New York, and now I'm getting a little bit off topic, is that I think people are afraid of hurting feelings by making trades, and I think sometimes a GM has to shake things up and decide that just being good isn't good enough. But I don't know if you ever thought about that. We can go into Winnipeg now. I don't know why that just came to my mind.
Look, let me just say this. It's hard to make trades. It's very, very difficult to make trades because you just never know how it's going to affect your locker room for good, for worse. It really is. I mean, you're in theory, we all sit here and um we talk about trading players in a very cavalier way. And again, I'm for me, like I was traded in the net, like in pro hockey, right? I literally showed up to practice and was like told, "Hey, here's like, can you take this phone call real quick?" Like it's hard. And I don't think GMs make these trades lightly because there is such a ripple effect. And if you're, I know you're talking about the New York Rangers. I know we've talked about the Edmonton Oilers defensive group,
Islanders.
the Islanders. It's not as easy as it is in the video game. It really is. So there's just so much more to it. And it's funny. Like I remember talking to Kyle Davidson about this a lot that first year going into the trade deadline, the second year. Sometimes trades take a year to materialize. Like, I'm not kidding you, a year to materialize. And you'll start having a conversation in the summer. Then you'll check back in during training camp. You might check back in at Thanksgiving. These things rarely happen like that, right? I know the trade deadline is a little bit different when you have these guys with expiring contracts. It can be a little bit different, but I do believe that, the addition by subtraction can be really powerful. And what I mean by that is you walk away from a good player who doesn't fit. But I also think these guys like to really do their homework. And you, again, we're talking about humans. And I just think that these things, there's more to them. Like, again, for us, it's easy. We just sit here and we're like, do on our computers, trade this for this and this for that. It doesn't work that way. So I do think some of these teams that, like the Rangers right now, that are like struggling, I don't think Chris Drury is sitting here in a rush to do anything in November. I just don't. I think like that would be a little bit of a panic reaction for me. And I think when you panic, that's when you overpay. That's when you can disrupt your locker room. So I'm not surprised that the New York Rangers have held on here and haven't done anything yet. It doesn't mean they won't, Johnny. I'm sure they're having conversations, but the other thing is the league knows, okay, this team is struggling and need a defenseman. This team is struggling and needs a goaltender. Like, there's not a lot of GMs that want to help another GM out, right? So, the New York Rangers decor is struggling, or the Edmonton Oilers decor is struggling. Like, the price to acquire goes up 15-20% just based on a team is in need. So like I know there's been a lot of heat on Lindgren, right? The defenseman in New York. Like are you ready to give up on him? I'm not ready to give up on him as a New York Ranger. Are you?
This summer I thought they could have found a cheaper option than signing him for, it's 1 year, 4.5 million, I believe, which is a lot. 4.5 million for a defenseman like Lindgren, who's, in and out of the lineup a pretty good amount.
Because of injury, not because of his play.
No, of course, because of injury. But I don't think he's a top pair defenseman. I think it's helped that he's paired with Adam Fox.
You think he's a top 4 defenseman?
He hasn't played like it this year, but I think they've rushed him back into the lineup too.
Okay. And I see a comment in the chat. Is this better? It says Lindgren, Trouba, Miller, and New York, they're all severely underperforming. And if you follow Sean Avery, we know that Keandre, as Sean Avery calls him on Instagram, is not his favorite defenseman. Look, here's what I would say, man. Top 4, I believe Lindgren, when healthy, is a top 4 defenseman. I think he's a top 4 defenseman, right? To have a top 4 guy at $4.5 million is, to me, it's okay. I don't think it's a big issue. Sure, are these guys not playing very well right now? Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I think Keandre Miller's having a little bit of a tough season. I think, Lindgren with his injury troubles in and out. I don't think Trouba's been a problem this year. I really don't. And I generally watch the Rangers. It seems these days like I watch as much as anybody.
Well, with Trouba, the issue is they put him back with Keandre Miller, and that's a D pair that doesn't really work for the Rangers. And again, there was no intention on talking about the Rangers today, but we're just going to finish this up a little bit and get into the Jets. But the D pairs that were working, and this is where the issue falls with the Rangers right now, is that Lindgren missed the first few games due to injury with a jaw injury. And he's come back. He's played wearing a bubble. Now he's in like the visor and like the little jaw thing. I don't know what you'd call it. And it's clear that he's just like not up to speed yet. And the lines they had before Lindgren came back into the lineup were working. The Rangers looked good in the beginning when they had Miller, Fox, they had Trouba, Schneider, and then Jones and Mancini. Victor Mancini, while he was a good surprise, those pairs were working. Right. And Lindgren comes back, and you're not going to healthy scratch Lindgren because of the money he makes and because of the name that he is. And now things look a little poor. Yeah. And the D pairs that they put back together aren't working.
Well, here's the thing, too. And New York Marine says the Rangers breakouts are miserable. And I think a lot is falling on the forwards, not supporting them. When you watch the New York Rangers right now, one thing that sticks out to me, and it's actually a perfect segue into the Winnipeg Jets because it's one of my favorite parts about the Winnipeg Jets is I don't see the New York Rangers D-corps getting back on pucks hard enough. Like, you watch the way they retrieve pucks, and like, look, some guys are quicker than others, but they just aren't getting back on pucks with enough urgency for me. And I'm going to flip this now because I really do want to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. You watch the Winnipeg Jets play hockey right now, and one of the most glaring strengths that this team has is the way their defense get back on pucks, which leads to clean breakouts. And, you so often see a puck gets chipped, maybe the other team is changing. You'd see a defenseman take their time getting back on the puck, and then by the time they get to it, they still have time to make a play, but it's rushed. And when you watch the Winnipeg Jets defensive group get back on a puck, these guys are going and sprinting back on pucks, whether they have time, whether they don't have time. You watch their partner is skating as hard back on the puck as the strong side defenseman who's chasing a puck down, whether it's Pionk and Sandberg. Like,
say that one again. How'd you say that?
I can barely say his name for me.
Pionk, but it sounded like you did like the pig noise.
I listen, you hear my voice, you hear my throat. Yeah, I'm struggling to speak today. But I think to me, that's a coaching thing. Like, that is a coaching detail that is being harped on this Winnipeg Jets D-corps. And when you see defenseman number 2, the weak side defenseman or the net front defenseman going back as hard on a puck, as hard as the strong side defenseman, like, you're in good shape. You're going to break pucks out. And they do a nice job of getting back on the puck. And they do a nice job of getting the puck north. Was it the first goal against Dallas where it starts with a breakout and then it ends up they score a goal like
the passing play, the Iafallo goal.
The Iafallo goal. It all started with a breakout where you see the defenseman just getting back hard on the puck, and this is a little detail that happens 200 feet basically, or 196 feet or 5 feet away from the other team's net, but seldomly leads to so much team success in the way that they play. And it's such a stark contrast between the Winnipeg Jets and the New York Rangers right now. And I think it's one of the reasons one team's, lost one game and the other team, the
Rangers' record is not representative of what they are.
But but everybody's throwing their hands up in the air. It's really bad. So credit the Winnipeg Jets and the way that their D is doing that. To me, it's the start of the strength of their team. Sure, they're getting great goaltending, no doubt about that. I mean, you look at the numbers are insane. So like Hellebuyck's got like a 183 today.
But they're scoring goals too. It's not just their D.
Highest scoring team in the league.
Yeah, number one power play, highest scoring team in the league.
They don't spend a lot of time in their zone, in their defensive zone, because of the way they break pucks out, because the way they go back on pucks. I see Chef Richard just dropped Colin Miller's name in the chat. If I remember correctly, on the Iafallo goal, I think Colin Miller was the guy who got back on that puck.
No, that was I think that was the second goal. I think that was the Kupari goal. But I think Miller rims the puck around, and then Kupari forces the turnover on Dumba.
It's just there's an urgency level that these guys are playing with, and again, to me, that's coaching. give Scott Arniel a lot of credit because every team should go back hard on the puck, right? Like,
but isn't that like a coach's dream? It's what? Being connected in all three zones. Like, that's a good hockey team. And Winnipeg is better than anyone else at being connected in all three zones. Like you mentioned, their first goal, the puck movement. They made Dallas on Saturday look like a bad hockey team. They did. And the Dallas Stars, they're my cup winning team. Here's the first goal. This is the IFL goal on the power play. But look at the movement. Look at Kyle Connor. Like, everyone's moving. No one's stationary. They're all getting to the net. Yeah. Like,
I'm going to send both clips of their power play goals from that game. I'm going to send it to
John Goyens,
to my two power plays with the Titans, because I want them to see not one guy on their power play overhandles the puck. Not one guy. Not one player overhandles the puck. All five guys touch it. You're either moving the puck. Nobody's dusting it off. Nobody's handling it. It doesn't matter what penalty kill you play against. If you have that type of puck movement, you're going to score goals. Because I'll state the obvious here, and I say it to my guys. You're 5-on-4. Shouldn't matter whether they're aggressive or not. If you guys move the puck and you don't hold it, and you know what you're going to do with the puck before you get it, you're going to be successful. And I think I looked this morning or yesterday. Winnipeg's power play is like 40%.
41%, I believe.
I mean, that is insane. Like, that is unheard of. I don't think
41.9.
I don't think they're going to be able to keep that up the entire season, but good for them.
Well, that's my next question for you, actually. And not to cut you off, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but is the only concern right now for the Jets that we're in November?
It should be.
Like peaking too early?
It should be, because
there's something to be said about that, right? Like, you don't want to peak too early. They have a little
bit of a history of that. And like, I want to ask you in the chat, especially you, Chef Richard, like, does this concern you that it's too early in the season? Does it concern you that they've had never a stretch like this, but there have been years in the last 5 seasons where I'm looking at the Winnipeg Jets in November and I'm like, this is a Stanley Cup contender. Like, there have been there have been stretches where they were dominant. And again, this is the best start in NHL history. So this is a little different.
First team to win 14 of 15.
So this is a little different. But Chef Richard says in the chat, he thinks that there's even another gear they can get to. And I think I saw this even in the chat too. Yeah. Hellebuyck's only had to steal one game. Like, he's been really good. But again, they're not giving up a lot of grade A scoring chances. Like, their grade A's have been really, really low. And their puck management has been really good. And again, they're breaking the puck out. They're not allowing other teams to forecheck them and hem them into their zone. I mean, it's a goaltender's dream.
Yeah. But this is something I'm going to talk to the Jets about tomorrow, because I'll be at their morning skate. They play the Rangers at Madison Square Garden tomorrow night. So I'm excited to actually hear from them, firsthand. And I'm not excited to watch that game because I have a very, very deep fear that it's going to be ugly, just like it was on Thursday night, which we haven't even talked about yet. But with Winnipeg, everyone says, and I saw Jeremiah's comment just now, like, wow, I'm off to a good start or whatever, too good of a start. Like, I'm not saying that the Jets fans should want them to not win every game, but, everyone says you want to be playing your best hockey at the right time. And the only fear right now is that Winnipeg might be playing their best hockey in a time where, we're 6 months away from the playoffs. So, like, it's not a real issue. It's just like a narrative that, is somewhat talked about sometimes. I think last year Florida proved it. When we talked to Florida in March, it was, are you concerned that you're peaking right before the playoffs? Or, is this the time where you want to get going? Like, I think it's just getting hot at the right time in the NHL seems to always be the benefit.
Winnipeg traditionally had some really bad losing streaks too after they've started really well? Like, I feel like I remember maybe it was a couple of years ago when I was in Chicago. We saw them early in the year. They looked like a team that should win the Stanley Cup. And then we saw them later and they were on like a 5 or 6 game slide at the time. And I was like, whoa, this is not the same team that the Blackhawks saw 2 or 3 months ago that looked like an NHL team versus an AHL team, right? So I think for them, they need to just make sure that they manage their peaks and valleys. more the more the bottom, obviously. Like, you want to just keep going to the sky. That's a great thing. But you just want to make sure that if they do have a little bit of a slide, and they will at some point, every team does, you just got to make sure you nip that thing quickly, right? Don't let that fester. Don't let that seep in where the narratives start to come into your locker room about about what you're talking about, Johnny, right? And having a fall. But look, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets, it's they're certainly giving their fans a reason to come to their building. They are. And I know attendance has been a little bit of a hot button topic issue there in Winnipeg, but the players are performing, and people were really critical of Scott Arniel. I don't remember, was it Commodore who had that like absolute
probably
like tirade on the internet. Yeah, Vic saying it was, where he was just talking about what a fraud this guy was and how could you hire this guy and yada yada yada. And again, look at the details that this team's playing with. I mean, I think coaches, when a team is that detailed, I think coaches deserve a lot of credit. I really do. So
yeah. Just last thing about Winnipeg in this topic, Saturday's game, the Jets fans obviously chanting US backup, taunting Jake Ottinger a little bit. Is that a game, or the way it's just trending right now, where Connor Hellebuyck is the clear-cut number one for the U.S.? I mean, I feel like he always kind of was, but there was talks with Swayman, talks with Ottinger. But with the way the season's gone on right now, I feel like it's a no-brainer that it's Hellebuyck. And again, these things could change. It's always, what have you done for me lately? But Saturday's game seemed to be the clear indicator for who's going to start the first game in the Team USA jersey at Four Nations.
Maybe. I mean, right now it would appear that way. But we're a ways away. What are we, 90 days out or something from Four Nations? I think February. So obviously that can change. But yeah, right now, sure, he's definitely having the best year. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. So, right now, and Thatcher Demko obviously hasn't played this year, so he's kind of taken himself out of the running of that a little bit. But
Chef Richard saying there are people who thought the chant was too harsh. I don't think that chant was harsh at all. Come to a game in New York. Are you kidding me? U.S. backup? That's nothing. That's just like supporting your own guy. I don't think that's a harsh chant at all. You think that was harsh by any means?
No. Looks like we're having a little bit of an issue with the audio there, but obviously Chef Richard said the Karens, not people. Well, listen, the Karens are always,
my mom's name is Karen, so I don't want to offend her.
They're always going to be, the Karens are going to always be upset about everything. As we start moving along here through the show today, Johnny, one thing that I know we don't have on here that I did want to talk about was I did watch the Jersey San Jose game last night.
Yeah, same here.
We can wait until we talk a little bit about Michkov, because Celebrini is just a guy that I want to bring up and talk about a little. But the next thing we were kind of jumping into here was the fact that Dante Fabro got put on waivers this weekend, and he got claimed by the Columbus Blue Jackets. And it's not so much that this is monumental. He's a 26-year-old. He was a former first-round pick who you kind of look at his trajectory with Nashville, and he kind of peaked a little bit early on, and then it's kind of just been a little bit of a downhill movement for him over the last couple of years. And you look at guys like him, and you kind of wonder what is he as a defenseman, right? To me, Johnny, he's a little bit of a tweener. He didn't quite come to the NHL and become an offensive defenseman, but he has.
Which he was prior in junior and college.
Right. But he also hasn't been great defensively. You look at his play and his matchups and the way they've sort of used him, and he's kind of caught a little bit in between. And a guy like Mark Delgado, who's playing on that third pair right now in Nashville, has just come up and given them a little bit of a different look for less money. Delgado doesn't make $2.5 million like Fabro did. And they feel like they're getting the same thing, from a little bit of a younger. I know he's one of your former team. Did you play with Delgado at UMass or no? I know he's a former UMass.
I never played with him, but he was a New Jersey Rocket when I was there on the younger team.
He's
and
a
then,
local guy for this
local guy.
area. I've gotten
Yeah.
a chance to meet him with the Atlantic District event.
He'll be a guy that comes on this show at some point.
Yeah, great guy. Great South Jersey kid. Good for him. Good to see him having some success. Good old UMass boy. That Greg Carvel definitely helped develop. Probably, I think some people thought he might have left a little bit early, but he's come on to that Nashville team and he's done an admirable job. Obviously, that's they're the last place team in their division. They're at the bottom of the pack in the entire NHL. Not something any of us expected.
Yeah.
But it's eerily similar with Liljegren from Toronto. A similar first round pick, similar trajectory, and has now kind of found himself on the outside looking in Toronto, which is why he doesn't play in Toronto anymore. And has moved on to another team. But I think it's all part of that larger development conversation, Johnny, about player development and maybe bringing guys in too early. And Vic saying, 300 games played. Are we talking 300 games played for Fabro? Is that what you're referencing, Vic? Yeah.
Well, Vic's saying is 300 games enough to evaluate a defenseman and define who they are.
I would say so. Yeah. 300 games is not a small number of games.
Yeah, but I still feel like guys can turn it on, later on. Like, I'm thinking now, we just talked about the Winnipeg Jets. Like, Josh Morrissey, was he an offensive? He's an elite offensive defenseman now. Was he that in his first 300 games? I wouldn't say so.
No, but he was.
You can always become that.
He still played like a top 4 defenseman.
But he's really turned it on the last 3 or 4 years.
But again, his confidence has grown, but he was still a good, solid top 4 defenseman who's sort of come into his peak. Again, has gotten better and better late into it, into his mid and then into his late 20s. How old is Morrissey now?
29.
Right. So this is a guy who really started to hit his stride around 26. When you talk about Liljegren or you talk about Fabro at 26 years old, they're going this way, right? I think with Morrissey, you've seen, maybe it wasn't straight up the mountain, but you've seen sort of that diagonal line going straight up. And
I'll give you his numbers. Let me give you Morrissey's numbers just so we have like a definitive look at this. In 18-19, career high 31 points. 19-20, 31 points again. 20-21, 21 points, but he played 9 less games. 21-22 is where the trajectory started. He had 37 points, but 12 goals. So first time he hit double-digit goals. And then 76 points in 22-23. Last year, 69 points. So there's a big jump from 21-22 to 22-23, and he's like 27 years old there.
Mm-hmm. So, like
I'm not saying Fabro can get to that point, but Fabro was a guy like...
They say defensemen go into their prime around 26 to 29 years old. They kind of say that those are the prime years when you really start to see a defenseman. Even Alex Pietrangelo, I remember, like, he hit 27 years old, and it was like, wow, this guy might be the best defenseman in the league for a minute, right? So I just don't think you're seeing that out of Fabro, though. I don't think you're comparing apples to apples, and I'm not suggesting you are, but to me, I don't think you're looking at him expecting him to pop, right? I just don't. So, and look, I think it's part of this larger conversation as we transition and talk about Matvei Michkov of the Philadelphia Flyers, which, again, a different situation. We're talking about a teenager, but the big word is development. And how do you develop players? And how do you, what is the secret sauce, Johnny? Like, is it time? Is it press box? Is it American League? Is it college? Is it it's just this development word amongst players is just year after year such a hot button topic.
Well, just one more thing I wanted to address. While we were talking about Fabro, Tommy T said, why is Fabro receiving all this attention and airtime? I think it's because of Barry Trotz's comments. And maybe this is the first thing that we've seen Nashville do. Fabro's been a steady guy in their blue line now for a couple years, and, putting him on waivers, is it like the start of Barry Trotz's, making moves? I think that's why he got so, like, Dante Fabro, no discredit to him, is not like a name that probably should have gotten all that attention, but I think it's because of what's been going on with Nashville in the last 2 weeks and the fact they put him on waivers is probably why it got more attention. Would I be wrong in saying that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's probably fair.
But Vic also wants to make fun of me before we go into this development conversation because we have a clip of me actually. And do you want to break it down, Colby?
So Jonny said to us when we were talking about this whole thing in the show, he goes, I'm pretty sure I was supposed to block a shot that Dante Fabro scored on in a college game. And stop it there, Vic. That's Jonny in the far part of your screen, number 23. Now, he's a winger, okay? He's a winger, but he's the first forward back. So I actually will commend Jonny's defensive zone coverage here on the shift as you roll it and you watch Jonny end up down low. That's not a place a winger usually ends up in the D zone, is behind the net. Wingers usually are in the slot, but he doesn't get a lot of help here. And then you watch Jonny try to recover, and this is Dante Fabro who's about to get the puck out in the slot, number 17, and kind of a pretty weak shot block attempt there by our man Johnny Lazarus wearing number 23 like he's Michael Jordan out there. But this was brought to our attention by Jonny before the show started, so he wanted to get one of his highlights into the show or lowlights.
Well, I wanted to hear you break it down. Yeah, I was dash two on my first
I don't personally think your D zone coverage was bad there. I thought you did the right thing as a winger. I think the centerman did not do a good job reading off you and realizing, okay, I need to stop in the low slot here because my winger went behind the net. But I will say your attempt at blocking that shot definitely leaves a little bit out there on the table. I can't imagine Greg Carvel was real happy with that shot blocking effort.
I feel like I'm getting shit on for the knee down. I was trying to take away like the low part. Like I didn't flamingo. You know, I tried to.
Why not go long? If you really wanted to block that shot, you should have laid out long body.
I should have laid out.
Yeah, you could have gone long body. If you really were committed defensively and had courage, that's probably what you would have done.
Yeah, that was a tough.
You weren't wearing
video
a cage
session
or a bowl. Like you had face protection.
Tough video session for me. I wonder how many shot blocks I was credited with my freshman year. Actually, I'm gonna look that up after this. But let's get into the Ben Benya. Johnny Lazo over under shot block 0.5, cashing heavy on the under.
but it really does. Like you saw the discourse. I mean, I actually went back and forth with some Flyers fans on Twitter this weekend, which, you know, never a good idea, but whatever. I did it anyway because they were just melting down about Matvei Michkov being a healthy scratch and then actually getting healthy scratched a second time on a road trip. And it's a larger discussion about developing players. It's why most teenagers have a difficult time coming into the National Hockey League and, you know, being able to survive. And obviously Bedard had no issues last year. It looks like Celebrini's having no issues. I mean, I watched almost that whole Devils game last night, Devils San Jose game, and Celebrini has the puck on his stick the entire game. I mean, he's just so fearless and so around the puck. Like as a teenager, he looks like he's already ready to be a force in the National Hockey League. But then you look at Michkov, you look at Will Smith. Those guys are having a little bit more of a difficult time 5-on-5. They really are. I think that, and Ben Benya, Tort's still the coach though, right? How can anyone be surprised? See, I don't look at it that way. I don't think this is a Torts being Torts situation with Michkov. I think if you're watching the Flyers and you're watching them, and I had all the Flyers fans sending me his expected goals and all his fucking ridiculous advanced stats, which I don't really give a shit about. Watch the Flyers. When he's on the ice 5-on-5, he's struggling. He's surviving. Okay, maybe struggling is not the right word, but he's only surviving, right? He's got the water has got to here, and he's treading to stay in survival mode. And sometimes it's really good for a young guy to go sit upstairs and watch. And it's not the same as watching film. Right. And people are saying to me, and I was responding to this, and I was actually giving thoughtful responses, long, thoughtful responses as to how you can watch a game in the press box and why that's a good thing. Right. And what that means.
Let me ask you this, because last year the Ducks just came out and said it that they were going to do a load management with Leo Carlsson. Nobody had an issue. But because we're using the healthy scratch term with Michkov, it's becoming an issue. Again, like, the Ducks just got ahead of it, in my opinion, where they recognized, hey, this is a younger kid who's going to struggle in his first year playing in the National Hockey League. His body's going to feel it from playing so many games.
That is the key, right? What you just said.
His body.
Dude. And I see Chris in the chat. In the first 13 game, Michkov had the second most ice time at 5-on-5. And I got to tell you something. They were looking the other way, the way he was playing in the defensive zone at times. And if you notice the last 4 or 5 games, he looks exhausted. You don't see the same guy forechecking. You don't see the same energy on the back check. His awareness, his board battles, they haven't been as good. Because what people fail to realize is, like, when you're a 19-year-old kid, you play every preseason game like it's game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Your adrenaline is at a level that nobody else's is at, even the first 4 or 5 games of the season. So Michkov has now gone through rookie camp, rookie games, training camp, preseason games, and the first 15, or so games of the National Hockey League schedule. And it probably feels like he's already played as many games as he played in the entire last season in the KHL. You hit a wall. So the reset for him, to me, is actually a good thing. It's the adults in the room saying, we don't want this kid to drown. We don't want him to start losing confidence. Sure, can he help you on the power play? The Flyers don't have one guy who can move the puck and make plays like he can on the power play.
Yeah, he's been great at, like, walking up top in the middle.
Listen, his power play, it's natural. 5-on-4, it's natural. It's natural, right? But, like, this is not a guy who is thriving. And it's a guy who's surviving. And that's not what you want for a teenager. It's just not. And here you go, Jeremiah. It's a great point. The only reason this is a story is because John Tortorella is polarizing and everybody wants to hate on him, right?
1,000%. Yeah.
It's 100%.
This could have been a Danny Briere call.
Listen, Danny Briere was fully in lockstep. He was fully in lockstep. And it's Briere and Keith Jones. If you think that they were not involved in this decision, well, then you don't know what you're talking about. Whether they say it publicly or not, they're involved in the decision. They completely support it, right? And let me just say that you want to jump in here. You look like you got something. Go ahead.
Well, no, the point I initially made was I think it's just the phrasing of words. Like, Anaheim, a losing team last year, was so clear in their intentions with Leo Carlsson. And I think because what Jeremiah said, because of John Tortorella being a little bit polarizing and the Flyers, being maybe more of a popular market than Anaheim, it's a bigger story. But to me, it's the same kind of thing. Just we're phrasing it in a different way. Like, no one had an issue with Leo Carlsson, being under load management last year.
And Will Smith, they're doing it to Will Smith.
Yeah,
they're calling them development nights.
Yeah.
Okay. They're calling it development nights, right? The freak out. Let me go into this a little bit. When you watch in the press box, okay, there's so many things you can learn. And it's different than video because you're so high above the ice, right? You see the game from a completely different angle. You can realize so many things like, how about offensive zone spacing, right? When you're on the ice, there's no room. It feels like there's no room and everything is flying. When you're upstairs, everything is slower.
Game's slow. Yeah.
So your brain can really process the game. And you start to see, like, wow, in the offensive zone, look how Travis Konechny always does this. Look at the room behind the net when Scott Lawton runs it up the wall and moves his feet. Right? You can learn tendencies of your teammates. You can learn tendencies of other teams. How about in the defensive zone? You can learn tendencies of the way defensemen like to break out the puck. You can realize, wow, I'm way too high on our breakouts right now. If I get 4 feet lower, I'm going to have way more time to get my feet up the ice and get off the wall and make a play. There's so much you can really take if you don't sit there on your cell phone during the game and actually watch. Not to mention the rest, right? This kid has run into a wall, and it's obvious the way that he's playing. I think Flyers fans need to just relax a little bit. Just relax a little bit. Trust the people that run the hockey team. And if you don't trust Torts, trust Danny and Jonesy, okay? Because these are guys who have been through this game. You haven't, they have, okay? Plain and simple.
I think the only issue with Flyers fans right now is that, like, outside of Michkov and Konechny, there just hasn't really been anyone to be so excited about with the way
I
the
get
season
it.
started.
I
Like,
get it.
I think that's really what the issue is that, like, Michkov was the only flair that they've really had on the ice. And when you take that away, it's like, I think all Flyers fans from what I've seen have been really frustrated with Owen Tippett. Joel Farabee hasn't really been the offensive threat that I think people thought he would be.
He plateaued. Like, he had a great first year, and then there's been a little bit of a plateau ever since. And you always hear his name, in trade talks. You do. You always hear his name. So I just think it's something people got to relax. And Chris asked Colby, do coaches tell players, I want you to watch a specific player? I remember Gallant scratching Hedel and saying, I want you to watch a left-handed Zibanejad when he scratched him. Yeah, that does happen. That really does happen. So, Bruce Cassidy used to do that a lot. And not just when we were scratched, but when I was in the American League, Bruce Cassidy would tell us to get up to watch the Boston Bruins. He'd say, go up there. And he would say, like, watch this guy, watch that guy. Absolutely tells you to watch him, tells you to watch him away from the puck, tells him to watch how he gets back on pucks. How do their shifts change? Like, all of that stuff. So, look, I think that there can be a lot learned in the press box. Now, I don't think having Michkov sit out 5 games in a row is a good thing, right? If it got to that. I don't think that would be a good thing, because then I think you start to play with a player's confidence. But 1 or 2 games here and there is good for him, because he played in the KHL, which is not one half as physical as the NHL, okay? The high danger areas are way harder to get to in the NHL. The guy has probably had more adrenaline in his body for the last 2 months of his life than he's ever had in his entire life, okay? And again, when you're a teenager and you've never managed it, it's why you see these young players hit a wall. And I think that this is a smart move by the Flyers, regardless of the power play, regardless of your graphs and your advanced analytics, which you can shove right up your ass, okay? I think that they're making smart moves here with Matvei Michkov's development, and very few players are given the right to develop in the National Hockey League. Very few, because it is not a development league. It's a win or get fired league, or it's a win or perform and get traded league. So I like what the Flyers are doing with Matvei Michkov.
I fully agree. Very well said. We have a couple more things we got to hit on. Just some weekend storylines. The Buffalo Sabres quietly have won 3 games in a row. They spanked Ottawa 5-1, came into the Garden, kicked the Rangers 6-1, and then beat Calgary in a shootout. UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, has a .956 save percentage in those 3 games, stopping 86 of 90 shots. Another storyline, Ullmark returns to Boston, gets the W, beats the Bruins. Ottawa, another team again, they limited Boston to, I believe, 18 shots, 0 shots in the third period. Ottawa did the same thing in New York 2 weeks ago, 18 shots faced against the Rangers. So Ottawa doing something to limit their opponents. Then the Capitals destroy St. Louis. Ovechkin, 10 goals on the season, all of them have which been assisted by Dylan Strome. And Logan Thompson is 7-0-0 to start this year and start his first season with the Capitals. And then Vic obviously wanted to throw in this stat as well. The Leafs are 7 of 13 on the power play since Matthews got hurt. 3-0-0, 11 goals for, 2 goals against in those games.
And we're going to talk about Leafs power play on Thursday with John Goyens. We are adopting the coaches room segment from Daily Face-Off Live. We're totally ripping them off on that, but it's honestly such a fascinating segment. And so we're going to start bringing a different segment, coaches room. He's not going to do the same thing he does on Daily Face-Off. He's going to bring a different video. This week, we're going to focus on Leafs power play since they got it going. He did Leafs power play a few weeks ago when it was struggling, but just starting to pick up. He's going to look at, maybe they're forcing plays to Matthews and whatnot. So that'll be Thursday. We'll have John Goyens from the coaches room with us to do a good video breakdown segment. And that's partially because of the request of you guys. You guys are always asking for more video and more breakdowns. So we hear you, and that's why we're going to start bringing John Goyens on every other week to do a coach's room segment.
Yep. And then one more thing we want to get to quickly before we do our bet of the day is the Hockey Hall of Fame induction, which is today. The names going in are Pavel Datsyuk, Shea Weber, Jeremy Roenick, Natalie Darwitz, Chrissy Wendell-Pohl, Colin Campbell, and David Poyle. I know you wanted to highlight Jeremy Roenick since you guys are good friends, Colby, so I'll hand it over to you.
I mean, listen, he's a friend of the show, as we all know. He was obviously up to his old antics for good over the weekend. They had the Legends game happening, and he took the mic and he was dancing on the ice. You could see the video a little bit reminiscent of when he did it when there was that delay in the LA Kings game. He's just, listen, this is a guy who, I mean, I start watching his highlights after this last night when I was watching him do this, and like, what a force JR was as a player, man. They don't make him like him anymore. I heard Mike Keenan talking about him on with Pierre Maguire on his podcast, and talking about what a good teammate he was and what a hard-nosed player he was. Like, any opportunity to talk about JR, I want to talk about him. He's just one of my favorite players of all time, one of my favorite people I've met in hockey. You see the smile. I mean, remember we had him on right after he got the call that he was going in the Hall of Fame, and just the emotion behind it all. I got to say, like, it's amazing to see. I'm so happy for him.
Yeah. And, the Hockey Hall of Fame induction is always a pretty cool spectacle, I guess we can call it. The speeches, I'm sure, will all be amazing. So I'm excited to hear JR speak tonight. We do have a full day of hockey. There's games starting at 12:30, Buffalo and Montreal. There's a lot to look forward to today. We'll get into our bet of the day, and we were talking about the Philadelphia Flyers before. This is presented by Bet365, and we're actually going to fade the Flyers and ride the San Jose Sharks, who, if you didn't know, have won 5 of their last 7 games. Mackenzie Blackwood, a 44 save shutout last night in New Jersey against his former team. The Devils most definitely deserved to win that game, but Blackwood was standing on his head. I actually, tweeted last night that hockey is wildly unpredictable with Blackwood having a 44 save shutout, but every Devil fan replied to my tweet saying, no, if you've watched the Devils, you could have predicted that this would happen. So I guess it wasn't a surprise to Devils fans, but hopefully Vitek Vanacek can hold it down tonight in Philadelphia as the Sharks take on the Flyers in the second leg of a back-to-back, But, got to ride the hot hand in San Jose and fade the Flyers. Any thoughts, Colby? Great value to it, plus 205.
Listen, the Devils didn't really have a good night last night, and I'll give San Jose credit. They hung on for dear life in that game, but I love watching Celebrini, man. He plays the same way he does in the NHL as he did as a college player. The kid is always around the puck. He's always around the puck. And Mackenzie Blackwood was phenomenal. I mean, the Devils had a lot of puck possession in the offensive zone last night. And again, they didn't play great. They weren't super sharp. It was probably like a B- effort, maybe a C.
They were on a back-to-back as well.
But they're rolling a little bit out there in San Jose. They got a little bit of good vibes. I'm sure, as you would say, I'm sure Will Smith will be back. Although maybe you don't change the lineup after a shutout. That is a thing for some coaches. But Ryan Morsovsky, friend of the show. We give a lot of love to friends of the show around here. That's important. So I like the move. And listen, there's expect to see Matvei Michkov flying for the Flyers tonight. He'll probably be back in the lineup, I would think. Feeling a little bit of rest. So hopefully he'll be out there buzzing, and he'll give the old hometown crowd something to look for.
Yeah, and just as far as the rest of the week goes, we should be loaded with guests. Tomorrow we're actually having Jeff Marek on the show, and I know a lot of you have been waiting to hear from him. Jeff's been super active in our chat for the past few weeks, so we're super excited to have Jeff come on the show tomorrow. Obviously, we'll catch up with everything going on with him and his new show that he's bringing to the Nation Network, and then we'll have Frank, I believe, joining us Wednesday, working on getting some current players this week, like Mitchell Chafee, who's on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and obviously we'll have our weekly recurring guest, Pat Maroon. So a lot to look forward to the rest of the week, a lot of hockey to be played. Colby, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
No, I think that's it. Looking forward to the rest of the week. We definitely have a loaded lineup of different people. I'm really looking forward to the coaches room thing on Thursday. I think that's going to be a big ad for the show. So Really looking forward to that. And like you said, your pal Jeff Merrick. It's funny, like I've actually Jeff and I have messed. We've texted a little bit. I've actually never talked to him like in a live situation before. I've never had a chance to meet him.
Phone call or anything?
No, just messages. Obviously I've seen his work, but we've never actually met in person. We've never actually talked on a Zoom or on a show or anything, unless maybe back in the day at some point, like maybe during the draft, maybe like when I was drafted, maybe, and I just don't remember. But let's just say in my elder years, I haven't had a chance to. So looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, I'll do Colby's Colby. I just called you Colby. Oh my God. I'll do Colby's little rant about liking, subscribing, giving us 5 stars. I know Colby usually is the one to hit on that, but please do so if you haven't already. J-Rock, I know we haven't mentioned the St. Louis Blues at all on this show, but I'll bring them up now so you can like and subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. A lot to look forward to here throughout the rest of the week. Again, thank you to all the veterans that have served in our chat. We love you guys. Hope you have a great day. And that's going to be it. We love you guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow, 9 a.m.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe